All right, welcome back to the Genesis course, a beginning church website course. In this lesson, we are going to talk about selecting your church domain name, and then we're also going to talk about purchasing your domain name, and then lastly, configuring your church domain name. So if you haven't guessed, this lesson is all about your domain name for your church. So let's get into it. After all of this, we're going to go over a few action steps for you for this lesson. So, selecting your church domain name. What do you need to do to select your church domain name? Here's a few tips. First, try to use your church name if possible. Names that are hard to tell if they are related to your church won't really do you any good. You want people to recognize it and immediately know that it belongs to your church. So keep that in mind. Also, you don't want to make your website domain name too long, as it will become hard to remember when you have send out emails for people to respond to, or you give out your email address. You don't want to make it so long that it takes forever to write down. So make it short and simple as best as you can. Also, you want to choose the right domain name extension. And what I mean by domain name extension is there are multiple extensions. For example, .com, .org, .info, .biz, .edu, .gov, .net, and so on. And as you can see, there are different designations for these domain extensions. Now, for a church, you want to focus on primarily two of them. A .com or .org is preferable, mainly because it's the most commonly used and understood. There are other domain name extensions like .cc, .cn, different ones designated for different countries, but those are hard to remember and they're not commonly used. So you want to stick to some that are commonly used. So out of the .com and .org, I would try to get a .org, as it represents your organization the best, since a church is an organization and not a commercial website. But if you could do a .com, that works as well because it's recognizable and common among domain names. So we just looked at selecting your church domain name. Hopefully those were a few tips that would help you out in that. Now let's look at purchasing your church domain name. On this page you will find this little banner, and on it, it's a search button where you can type in your website, what you want it to be, and hit go and see if it's available. And then once you do that, it'll take you through the process of seeing if it's available. And then once you find one that you like, then you can purchase it through that process. And you can purchase multiple years at a time, or you can just do 1 year. I would suggest doing multiple years because you can save money over time. If you purchase it, you can lock in your rate. So check that out. Also, now we're going to look at configuring your domain name. When you're going through this process of buying your domain name through GoDaddy, what you're going to want to do is look out for the options to configure your domain name. And if you can remember from last lesson, we talked about the land, house, and address. And if you want to invite someone to your house, you have to have your house built on some land, and then your address is what points people towards your house. Now remember, it's the same thing with a website. Your website is hosted on a hosting server, and then your domain name points to your website. So when you're purchasing your domain name, how you link your domain name to your website is actually a direct link between your domain name and your hosting account. And this is done through what's called a name server, or NS settings. And your name server tells your domain name where you are hosting your website. Now, for this tutorial, you'll be hosting through PowWeb, and we'll get into that in the next lesson on how to set up your PowWeb account. But for now, set up your name servers as follows. You'll have a couple name server options, and number one, you want it to be ns.powweb.com, and then the second name server to be ns2.powweb.com. Excuse me, the first one was ns1.powweb.com, and then the second ns2.powweb.com. And this tells GoDaddy that your domain is hosted at PowWeb, and these are the name servers that PowWeb has designated when you're hosting through them. So it's as simple as that. That's how we configure our church domain name. Now your action steps, and we've already talked about this, but to go over again, what you'll need to do is purchase your church domain name. Find that banner through GoDaddy, and I appreciate you again in advance for purchasing through my affiliate links, as they help me fund the Great Commission, and so thank you for that. Also, you'll want to set your domain's name servers, the ns1.powweb.com and ns2.powweb.com. So it's as simple as that. We'll see you again in the Genesis course episode or lesson 3, and we're going to talk about how to purchase and configure your website hosting account, which is going to be done through PowWeb. So look out for that lesson number 3. Take care.